I'd always been fascinated by urban exploration, finding places long abandoned and exploring what's left behind. So when I heard about the abandoned nuclear power plant deep in the forest, I knew I had to check it out. The plant had been shut down in the 1980s due to safety concerns and had been left to decay ever since. Rumors circulated about what had happened there, whispers of radiation leaks, mysterious disappearances, and strange sightings. But I didn't believe in ghost stories or conspiracy theories. I was just eager for the thrill of exploring a place that few others had dared to enter. I convinced my friend Tom to come along. He was an experienced urban explorer, and I figured it would be safer to go in with someone who knew what they were doing. We drove out late in the afternoon, navigating the winding roads that led into the heart of the forest. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle began to fall as we parked the car and made our way through the dense underbrush. As we approached the power plant, the massive concrete structure loomed over us like a sleeping giant. The cooling tower stretched up into the mist, and the silence was deafening. We had to cut through a section of rusted chain link fence to get in, and as we stepped through, a strange feeling washed over me, a sense of foreboding that I couldn't shake. The main entrance was partially caved in, but we managed to squeeze through a gap in the rubble. Inside the plant was a maze of dark hallways and rusted machinery. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay, and the only sounds were the dripping of water and the distant echo of our footsteps. We switched on our flashlights and made our way deeper into the facility, eager to explore. The further we went, the more unsettling the place became. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and old safety signs warned of radiation hazards. We passed several rooms filled with broken equipment and discarded safety gear. It was as if everyone had just up and left one day, leaving everything behind. Then we heard it, a faint rustling sound coming from somewhere deeper inside the plant. Tom and I exchanged a glance, and he motioned for us to keep moving. We followed the sound, our footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. As we turned a corner, our flashlights caught something strange on the wall, deep gouges in the concrete, like something had clawed at it with immense force. What the hell could have done that? Tom muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't have an answer. But as we stood there, trying to make sense of what we were seeing, the rustling grew louder, more frantic. It sounded like something was moving, fast and erratic, just out of sight. We pressed on, our curiosity getting the better of us. The corridors seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning like a labyrinth. The further we went, the more signs of damage we saw. Bent metal doors, shattered windows, and deep scratches that tore through the walls and floors. It was like something massive and powerful had torn through here in a frenzy. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and a chill ran down my spine. Then we reached a set of large steel doors that were slightly ajar. Beyond them, the rustling grew louder, almost frantic. Tom gave me a nod, and we slowly pushed the doors open, stepping into a massive chamber that looked like it had once been a control room. The walls were lined with panels of blinking lights, and large monitors hung from the ceiling, dark and lifeless. But what caught my attention wasn't the room itself, it was what was inside. Huddled in the corner, partially hidden behind a row of overturned desks, was something moving. At first, I thought it was a person, but as my flashlight beam settled on it, I realized it was something else entirely. It was an animal, or at least it had been. Its fur was patchy and matted, and its eyes were a milky white. But its size, it was unlike any animal I'd ever seen, larger than a wolf, with a grotesque, twisted body that seemed almost deformed. Tom gasped, and the creature snapped its head up, its blind eyes locking onto us. For a moment, there was silence. Then it let out a low, guttural growl that echoed through the room, sending a shiver down my spine. "We need to get out of here," Tom whispered, but before we could move, the creature lunged at us, moving with a speed and agility that didn't match its grotesque appearance. We stumbled back, barely managing to avoid its snapping jaws. I felt a rush of adrenaline as we bolted for the door, the creature hot on our heels. We ran blindly through the maze of corridors, the sounds of snarling and scraping metal close behind us. I could hear Tom shouting directions, but it was hard to focus, my mind racing with fear. The plant felt like it was closing in on us, the walls pressing tighter and tighter as we ran. I could feel the creature getting closer, its hot breath on the back of my neck. We burst through a doorway and into another large room, slamming the door shut behind us. The creature crashed into it with a deafening bang, and I quickly shoved a piece of broken machinery in front of the door to block it. We stood there, panting and terrified, listening to the creature snarl and scratch at the metal on the other side. What the hell was that? I gasped, trying to catch my breath. Tom shook his head, his eyes wide with fear. I don't know, but it's not natural. We need to find a way out of here before more of those things show up. We both stood there, listening to the creature's snarls and the relentless scratching against the door. Whatever it was desperate to get to us. I could feel the fear coursing through my veins, every instinct screaming at me to run, to get as far away from this place as possible. We scanned the room quickly. It seemed to be some kind of storage area, filled with old, rusting equipment and metal barrels marked with faded radiation symbols. There were no windows, and the only door was one we had just barricaded. Panic started to set in as the creature's growls grew louder, more furious. Suddenly, a loud banging echoed from the door as if the creature was throwing its entire weight against it. The metal groaned and creaked under the pressure. I looked at Tom, panic in my voice. That door isn't going to hold much longer. We need to find another way out. Tom frantically searched the room, pushing aside debris and kicking over barrels. There's got to be a hatch or something, some emergency exit, he muttered desperately. I joined him in the search, shoving aside an overturned shelf. As I did, I noticed something beneath it, a small square hatch hidden in the floor, almost completely obscured by dust and debris. Tom, over here, I shouted. Together, we cleared away the debris and managed to pry the hatch open. A dark tunnel stretched out below, leading who knows where. There was no time to think. I dropped down into the tunnel, my flashlight flickering as I hit the ground. Tom was right behind me, pulling the hatch closed just as the door behind us gave way with a deafening crash. We crawled through the tunnel as fast as we could, the sound of the creature's roars fading behind us. The air was thick and musty, and the tunnel walls seemed to close in around us. I could feel my heart racing, every nerve on edge as we pushed forward, praying that this tunnel would lead us out of the nightmare we'd stumbled into. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened up into another room, a maintenance area, judging by the equipment scattered around. I saw a set of stairs leading up to what looked like another exit, and without hesitation, we made a run for it. We emerged outside into the cold night air, gasping for breath. The forest around the plant was eerily quiet, the mist hanging low over the ground. For a moment, we just stood there, catching our breath, our hearts pounding in our chests. Then, from the darkness of the trees, we heard a faint rustling. My blood ran cold. Tom and I exchanged a glance. We knew we couldn't stay here. Whatever was inside that plant might not be alone, and there could be more lurking in the shadows of the forest. We sprinted back the way we came, weaving through the trees, not daring to look back. My mind raced with images of the creature we'd seen and the sounds we'd heard, the things that defied explanation. What had happened in that plant? What kind of experiments had they been running that could create something like that? As we reached the car, I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. We jumped in and I floored it, the tires kicking up mud as we sped away from the plant. Even as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something was still out there, lurking in the shadows. We didn't stop driving until we reached the nearest town, our faces pale and our minds reeling. We tried to explain what we'd seen to the local authorities, but they dismissed us as over-imaginative thrill seekers, telling us to stay away from the old plant. To this day, I still don't know exactly what we encountered in that place, but I do know one thing. I'll never go back. Some places are abandoned for a reason, left to rot and decay, and some secrets are better left buried in the dark, forgotten by time. If you ever find yourself near an abandoned nuclear power plant, my advice is simple. Turn around and walk away, because sometimes curiosity doesn't just kill the cat. It creates monsters.